I'm gonna keep this video to about 10 minutes. That's my goal, that's my objective, 10 minutes. And I'm gonna say something that is gonna be extremely petty. It's gonna be really small of me, but I have a method to the madness. There's a reason that I'm saying it. It's not this kind of emotional response. There's actually a logic to the reason why I make this particular argument. The argument basically boils down to one Elizabeth Warren who's starting a new group. It's called Warren Democrats. Now, I look at that and I think to myself, I mumble silently to myself, angry. I don't like her. And there's been this bit of a nursing hatred is too strong, but a great dislike over the course of this election campaign and the way she's run this particular election. And now she's gone silent on this kind of massive corporate tax bailout that she signed on to just with Sanders and everybody else. And now on the other issue with Joe Biden, the rape stuff. Look, my basic point. Elizabeth Warren cannot be allowed to prosper in whatever she's going to do in regards to politics. Yes, that sounds petty. No, it's not petty. It is the correct plan of action. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. If you guys dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. It's a blurry-eyed morning. But I want to get this out before I leave for today. Elizabeth Warren is starting a new group. Now, I looked at this and I thought, she's mocking our movement. She's mocking our movement. We're starting a new phase of our grassroots movement right now. That means working to ensure we put people first in solving the coronavirus outbreak and the economic crisis in the short term and rebuilding the economy in the long term. We're calling it Warren Democrats, a movement of voters, candidates, and leaders who believe in the power of bold, inclusive reform to root out corruption in government and put power in the hands of people. We believe America can come out of this crisis stronger than before, but only if we rally around candidates like Elizabeth Warren who support bold solutions rather than temporary fixes and short-term deals. We will not only work to re-elect Warren to the Senate, we will elect Democrats up and down ballot who share our vision and mobilize people to support those candidates, those ideas, and continue to build the grassroots movement that Elizabeth Warren inspired. Isn't that precious? Isn't that precious? The movement that Elizabeth Warren inspired. She is even ripping off that aspect of this, the movement issue, meaning Sanders, who's arguing this political revolution. For the most part, we call it a movement. And now Warren is saying she's taken her little engine that could and is now trying to appropriate that. Look, it is imperative that the left, whether it's Warren trying to get back into the Senate, whether it's Warren starting this particular organization, whatever that organization is going to represent. I mean, after all, what is indeed this organization going to represent? Is it effectively going to be like Warren, a political actor, more so than an ideological actor that takes whatever shape she needs to get from point A to point B, dishonesty allowed at times? I'm just massively distrustful of a group that's running by the name Warren Democrats. Warren has been strangely quiet recently. Do you remember this back and forth she had with Chris Matthews? Some people say this is one of the things that got Chris Matthews fired.
The former mayor of New York said that to a pregnant employee.
Well, a pregnant employee sure said that he did. Why shouldn't I believe her? You know, I'm just really tired of this world. This one is personal for me. It really is.
But you believe that you believe he's that kind of person who did that.
Look, pregnancy discrimination is real. And we have gone on and on and on where people say, oh, I can't really believe the woman. Really? Why not?
If you believe he's lying.
I believe the woman.
You believe he's
which
lying.
means he's not telling the truth.
And why would...
I believe the woman. I believe the woman. Fair enough. There's a woman right now, Tara Reid, that is making the argument that Joe Biden raped her. Is Elizabeth Warren going to come out and believe the woman on that very specific case also? And is Elizabeth Warren also going to attack the supporters of Joe Biden who's been attacking the woman who's alleging that Joe Biden raped her? She's so strangely quiet. Believe the woman. Of course, until it's somebody that you like. Look, the reason why I say Elizabeth Warren has to fail in her pursuits in regards to trying to get the left is because she has utterly and atrociously outright betrayed the left. And at some point, there needs to be some understanding of the term accountability. If the left allows Elizabeth Warren to prosper in her pursuits, using the left to prosper, moving from the 2016 and the 2020 election, you are incentivizing your own mistreatment just based on your actions. Meaning somebody can flagrantly use, abuse, take advantage, grift votes and political support, not back you either in 2016 or 2020, and you still turn around and try to get support. And to show you what I mean by this, this is the tenor of Warren's campaign. I'm just going to go through these pretty quickly. But very basic point. This is targeted and very specific to a certain demographic in the political space.
I'm with Bernie on Medicare for All, and let me tell you why. I spent a big chunk of my life studying why families go broke. And one of the number one reasons is the cost of health care, medical bills. And that's not just for people who don't have insurance. It's for people who have insurance.
So right there, that's before it became very clear and obvious that she was not for Medicare for All, but I'm for Medicare for All. I'm with Bernie. That's my person. Climate change. Listen to this particular argument on climate change. Again, tailored, very specific, a certain part of the electorate. These are effectively Bernie voters. Let's hear
Net zero carbon pollution economy-wide by 2050. So I wanted to ask you today if you could commit to doing so and how you plan on achieving that starting day one and in your first 100 days as president.
No, I don't want to do this by 2050. I want to do this by 2030. That's where we ought to be aiming.
Now, 2030. Now, what other candidate has a plan like that? Let's say not Tom Steyer. What other candidate in the race has a plan that could accomplish these big objectives in regards to their legislation and the policies that they are putting out? Yes, Sanders. That argument, again, just like the Medicare for All argument, is tailored directly to Sanders voters in order to get their votes and their support. You have a situation like this. Teen who died of COVID-19 was denied treatment because he didn't have health insurance. U.S. woman gets billed for $34,927.43 for the coronavirus treatment. Laid off workers now worry about health care during health crisis. The U.S. broken health care system is why the coronavirus is set to explode in America. That and incompetence, yes, is the perfect storm. But in the context of this, and in the context of Elizabeth Warren trying to get votes and trying to get money from the left, in this case, I mean, after all, she was running this race as if her and Sanders were somewhat of a one-to-one, as if one was just as good as the other. You have people suffering as a result of this virus. And Warren, the person who was using the left for votes, using the left for money, and who basically said, I am backing Medicare for All. I am supporting this particular policy. Nowhere to be found. Meaning the left poured their support into Warren, thinking that Warren was somehow working in tandem with the left. Even if she wasn't working with Sanders as a one-to-one, they thought that supporting one would at the very least push its support into the other. You had a lot of people who were backing Warren who were bewildered at Warren not turning around and supporting Sanders and tried to push the candidate to go out and support Sanders. She would not do that. How could somebody be a benefit to the left when they were attacking the left or wasn't supporting the left? Yes, it was a political decision, just like it was a political decision in 2016. She was going to get political concessions for splitting the vote and working in tandem with the Democratic Party. I've said before that was not a bug, that was a feature of the plan in order to tie Sanders down while Joe Biden can give the killing blow, even if that meant using the super PAC to do so. Here's the other thing, and I guess my basic point here is she used the left. She used the left for votes and cash. She pulled away support from Sanders, putting out a message as if they were somewhat of a one-to-one. It became clear they weren't a one-to-one, and then she got belligerent when she collapsed in the polls and attacked Sanders. Sanders at no point would have ever attacked Warren. Even when he was losing in that race, he never attacked her. When the roles were reversed, her true colors came out. I guess my point is, in the context of a health crisis, there is somebody in this race that is pushing for Medicare for all, the policy that she claimed to support. There's somebody in this race that's looking for big change on the issue of climate. Again, she was skimming votes. Again, something that she was supposed to support. And yet, when she got out the race, she didn't back Sanders. And not just not backed him. She just belligerently, towards the end, even though she had no capacity to win a state, belligerently attacked him.
Was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. Bernie knows me and has known me for a long time. He knows who I am, where I come from, what I have worked on and fought for, and the coalition and grassroots movement we're trying to build. Democrats want to win in 2020. We all saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016. And
we saw the impact of the factionalism in 2016, basically blaming Sanders in some way for the loss to Trump, or blaming Sanders in some way of the Democratic Party breaking up and splitting up. No, it wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the rigging. It's everything to do with Sanders and the way he and his supporters kind of operate. So that's her in one case. Again, Sanders never attacked her. He never attacked her. Here's another one. This is Warren attacking Sanders on medical records. Yeah, I do have a point. Let me make this short first.
Do you think that Bernie Sanders needs to release more of his health record?
I think that was pretty clear. People made it clear that he had made a promise to release all his medical records, and I thought that was what he was going to do.
Do you feel like he hasn't done that so far?
He just hasn't. I don't think that's a question of opinion.
She is now attacking him on his healthcare records. Like, think about that. Like, this goes beyond policy at this point to, yeah, I don't think he's putting out enough healthcare records either. I'm even going to go there. Now, Sanders would never bring up the stuff with Biden. Sanders would never create a distinction between her and him. And yet, they had no issue with hitting him even on the lowest common denominator of, yeah, he's been lying about his healthcare. Here's another one. This is her going after actual voters. Not even the candidate, the voters.
So when Culinary 226 did come out and criticize Bernie Sanders for Medicare for All, his supporters really attacked them. Do you feel, and you're someone who's actually come under that attack before, back in Iowa, back in January, do you feel like he's done enough to condemn the culture online that stems from his movement?
I've said before that we are all responsible for what our supporters do. And I think Bernie has a lot of questions to answer here. And I am particularly worried about what happened in the attacks on members of the Culinary Union, particularly on the women in leadership. The whole notion of publishing their personal addresses, their phone numbers, and then making very aggressive threats against their own safety and the safety of their families.
Wow. Now, in this case, random people on Twitter, Elizabeth Warren is associating with Bernie Sanders and is effectively using this straw man to castigate Sanders and his supporters, lumping in with the argument that the Democratic Party started to make in regards to not just attacking Sanders, because nothing they were putting out was landing and sticking on Sanders, but media who hated him and the Democratic Party, for the most part, who hated him, all came up with one specific narrative that his supporters are uniquely angry, aggressive, and bad, and bros. And Warren, again, not a bug, feature in this plan, went out to attack him. At the very end of this process, Warren, who said she was never going to use a super PAC, ends up using a super PAC to stay into the race, just to get through Super Tuesday and to split the vote. You must understand how important that was. She said, I would never use a super PAC. That didn't last long at all. These are the states for Super Tuesday that Sanders won, and these are the ones that Joe Biden won. Now, the key point here is that Warren had no potential to win a state. She had no potential to win even her own state. And yet, you would think that, again, if roles were reversed, Sanders would have dropped out and backed her to the hilt. Because, again, for him, this is somewhat of an ideological struggle where he wants to bring the party into the country to the left. That's his point, first and foremost. And it shows that these are not the same quantity of people, because when she dropped out the race, she screamed about snake emojis and said, yeah, thanks for the money, thanks for the political support. No, I'm not going to support the left. I don't owe you anything. And that was the end of her campaign. Look at these states. Sanders wins Vermont, Utah, Colorado, California. Now, if you look at Texas, Joe Biden, 34.5%, Sanders, 30%, Warren, 11.4%. Meaning, if you take half of this, because Sanders was getting roughly half of her support, he wins Texas, potentially. Same thing with Minnesota. Joe Biden, 38.6%, Sanders, 29.9%, Warren, 15.4%. Again, she had no potential to win any of these states, let alone the Democratic primary. She was broke, hemorrhaging cash. She used a super PAC just to keep her in the race of Super Tuesday to allow her to split the vote, allowing Joe Biden to give a killing blow. Maine, same thing, 34.1%. Sanders, 32.9%. Warren, 15.7%. That's a win if she wasn't in the race. Massachusetts, Biden, 33.6%. Sanders, 26.7%. Warren, 21.4%. Again, that would have been a win. Now, imagine for the moment that it doesn't look like this. It's Sanders winning another 4 in this contest on Super Tuesday. What's the narrative going forward? Is the narrative the same as it is now? I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is basically she used the left. Yes, I thought it was pretty clear, but beyond that point, there are a lot of people who actually believe that she used the left, votes and cash. And then when it came down to it, at the very end, where the left really wanted her to back the guy who was supporting these policies that she keeps saying and talking about, shit, couldn't be bothered. Now, question. If you turn around and support somebody that did that in 2016 and in 2020, a political actor that for the most part, when all of these guys were consolidating, she chose not to do that, which showed where she stood on this particular issue. Instead, when all of the other people were consolidating and Sanders was on Rachel Maddow looking pretty much begging Warren to back him, because this was the time where some news story, some break and the monotony of these people just kind of consolidating would have helped. She goes on Rachel Maddow and does this.
What is your history with Vice President Biden, your relationship with him like?
So we go back a long way. We were in the bankruptcy wars against each other. When he was vice president, I got to do some work with him. He is exactly, at least this is my view, he is exactly who he says he is. He's a decent guy. I mean that in the good of decency. And it comes through in pretty much everything he does.
You have disagreements with him on a number of core policy issues, though.
Yep. And agreements on a number of core policy issues. My whole life has been about...
This is basically, yes, I'm going to suck up because I want to roll in the administration, just like I wanted to roll in the administration of Hillary Clinton. That's basically what this is. Now, this loving touch to Joe Biden, somebody who she supposedly got into politics to go against with the whole bankruptcy bill and everything else. Loving touch. How can you not be mad at this? Like, I hope you understand what I mean by this. How can you not be mad at this? Yes, I do believe that she's betrayed the left. And yes, I do believe that she's owed the left, just considering for the way that she ran this race. Let's listen to the way she talked about the guy who, for the most part, she was emulating this entire race.
I believe that the vice president has the same goal. We may have come at this from different directions and may continue a long time, dating back way before I ever got involved in housing crash. In fact, the first town halls, and Bruce drove me out. A
relationship like that.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I wanted to ask you about that relationship with Senator Sanders is something that I talked to him about last night when I was in Vermont, and that is that there have been some really untoward attacks by Senator Sanders' supporters, not by him himself, against you. Particularly online. His supporters have called you a snake. They used the snake emoji for you. They've called you a traitor. They tried to organize somebody to primary you, to force you out of your Senate seat here in Massachusetts. And the senator said last night, he responded, he said, I condemned that. And he's distancing himself from what his supporters have done. But I wanted to ask if that rose to your level of consciousness, if you were aware of that was going on, if you have any reaction to that or to his comments about it last night.
It's not just about me. I think there's a real problem with this online bullying and sort of organized nastiness. And I'm not just talking about who said mean things. I'm talking about some really ugly stuff that went on. Out in Nevada, when the Unite Here had put out an analysis of the different candidates and their views on healthcare and other issues. And some of the Bernie supporters online took exception to it. And they didn't just take exceptions like, we disagree, and, outrageous way to do this, which anybody can do. That's fine. And you can be clever and you can find clever ways to be kind of mean sometimes. Okay, I get that part too. But they actually published the phone numbers and home addresses of the two women, the executive director, the communications director, women of color, immigrant women, and really put them in fear for their families. These are not, these are tough women. Tough women who've run labor organizing campaigns and really earned their jobs in their union, the hard way. And yet said for the first time, because of this onslaught.
Now, understand what she's saying. Random people on Twitter who not associated with the Sanders campaign, just random people, is somehow castigate Sanders. It's such the bizarre theory in the way that she's saying this. But she gets out the race, and this is what she ends up doing. Now, if you're a lefty, and you wanted this race to go a different way, fair enough. What does accountability look like? And does accountability look like backing Warren in whatever pursuit Warren goes in, especially after doing this for 2016 and 2020? Meaning you incentivize your own taking advantage of this, if that makes sense. Basically, you are going to perpetuate you getting fucked over just based on allowing stuff like this to ride without consequence. That consequence needs to be the ability to withdraw support. I'm not touching that. You didn't back me when I needed you to back me in 2016. You didn't back me when I needed you to back me in 2020. Not just didn't back me, you actively worked against the left in this while, again, shucking and jiving and grifting for votes and money from that same left. Warren should get no support. And the left, if it wants to have any level of credibility, needs to be able to walk on whatever pursuits Warren is coming up with. That is what accountability looks like. If you want to have any level of political power or political might, I suggest that you start there. Yes, it may come across as being a bit petty, but it's not really an issue of pettiness. It's an issue of political accountability. This ability or this concept of having a consequence to bad behavior, especially if that bad behavior is directed towards your part of the political spectrum. If there is no ability to give consequence, then you will be perpetually walked over. The left has to get around that. For example, this is just sad and shouldn't happen, especially after everything that's happened in 2020 in this race.
It's such a classic establishment thing to do. Oh, no, it's okay. We found an establishment woman, so it's okay. No, it's not at all okay. It has to be a progressive. And so, I'm sure some of you will find this controversial. I don't find it at all controversial. I think it has to be Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, come on, Cenk. Cenk, if you think that Elizabeth Warren is going to unite the party, she hasn't endorsed Bernie Sanders. Like, this narcissistic ego trip that she's on right now is unacceptable, Cenk. It's unacceptable. And people.
Now, think about what I've just shown you, the story that I just told you, the narrative. I haven't lied about anything in this narrative. Everything in this that I've said has been correct. And basically, my basic argument is Warren ran a campaign working on the left, at the same token would not turn around and support the left. Anna and all of these guys were hoodwinked because in their heads, Warren was working in tandem in some way with some notion of the left just because of the way she was talking and the way that she ran her campaign. Not so much. Not so much. So Anna recognizes, well, there's no way people would back this. So people are angry at her about this. They feel like they've been taken advantage of. Uyghur turns around and says, nope. It has to be Warren. We have to get over this notion that she screwed us over. We got to get over this notion that she betrayed us, that she took advantage of the left, that she grifted votes and cash. We got to get over that. We got to get over that. She got those snake emojis and she was very sensitive towards those snake emojis. And, that mattered more than the Green New Deal, or that mattered more than the Medicare for All, or that mattered more than the bills for the COVID-19 thing. That mattered more than all of that other stuff. And yet he still rationalizes in his brain, home of the progressives, that the best that he could do is turn around and support the person who put a knife in him this electoral 2020 season. That's just astonishing. That is not what accountability looks like. I'm just saying. Like, share, and subscribe. We have somebody here. Dilly Y'all 357. I can't believe you guys are up this early on a Saturday morning. Tara Reid was a supporter of Warren. Her being a champion for the women, Jay feel could have assisted in silencing her. Warren, Anita Hill, Tara Reid, that was pure ammo. Me Too movement said no to Tara. That's the wild part, right? Like when Tara Reid tried to go out and get her story out and get support, she couldn't get it. She went to multiple lawyers. The lawyers wouldn't necessarily touch her case. One last point, 2 points. You should be against this Warren stuff for 2 reasons. One, you don't necessarily want a group of people who are similar in their political tenor to Warren perpetuating themselves in some kind of movement, taking up the political space and convincing people that she is somehow akin to what Sanders is talking about. Just the very way that they've run this race in and of itself should show you that those are 2 very drastically different quantities. And no, I don't necessarily want this kind of false idol where people get confused thinking that one is somehow akin to the other. On the other hand, for that, also, again, accountability. What does accountability looks like? It does not look like backing somebody for vice president that put a knife in you in 2016 and put another knife in you in 2020. That does not look like accountability. That looks like you're being walked over. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.